Hi, happy Friday evening to all of you out there. This is our first ever it's always recorded. It's our first ever release of an Ivory Tower special on YouTube. So, hi all. And if you're not on YouTube right now, you're listening to us on the podcast. So, yay, multiple modalities. And I've now become the web therapist.
You just say yay, multiple modalities.
Yep, I did. So you can see, if you're watching right now, we have a lot going on in our screens. Welcome to our Boiler Room Brady Bunch. So I'm Andrew Rimby. My fellow co-host, please introduce yourself.
I'm Adam Katz.
Okay, yeah, you have to get the last name. We have our media director with us. Please introduce yourself.
I am Erica Grimet.
Okay, and our official contributor. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm married to Pippi.
Okay, welcome all. Okay, so we are really excited. We have been broadcasting this event for the whole week. So we've gotten a lot of responses from the community that we want to bring to your attention. That sounds official. This is very informal. So
but you can talk about our website. That's official now.
Yeah, well,
That's true.
Yes, we have the Ivory Tower Boiler Room website that we are linking here in our episode. And the blog space is up. You'll see that all of us now have intro pieces about how we came to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, or how first Adam responded to my Facebook message. And exciting news, in August, it'll be 1 year. And we have some exciting plans for our anniversary, including a live show that will allow you to attend on Zoom, which I can't wait to see listeners. So, writing is our theme tonight. And we're gonna do this writing roundtable a lot. So, right, this is only the beginning questions. So,
and this one ties in with this month's theme in the blog, right? Every month we won't necessarily have a theme, but for the first month we decided that everybody once a week one of us posts what we call a big think, which I find funny. Nobody else does. That's fine.
And Adam was this week. So Adam, do you want to explain what the theme was of your?
So the theme was to define yourself as a writer, or to talk about your writing process, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It was writing about ourselves as writers was what I said when we
writing
started.
About yourself as a writer. Thank you. No, that's fine. So I wrote an essay about how much I don't like writing essays. It happens. And you'll see what's in store with Andrew and Mary and Erica throughout the rest of the month. Yeah. But for right now, we have a roundtable where we actually, as Andrew said, we solicited similar kinds of opinions from our fans, from the people who regularly attend Andrew's writing room.
Yeah, those who have just responded to the call. So we're gonna first try to put our quills together. And wow, that sounds really manically erotic. Maybe I'll use that. Oh, I think I just broke my writer's block.
You have to buy me a cup of tea first.
Yeah, hasn't it?
So please, someone cite that.
What Andrew meant is we're going to bump heads.
Yeah, we're gonna.
That's less suggestive,
okay,
right?
Okay, we have to be serious now. So we're gonna try to answer these questions. So we don't have the answers for you. So spoiler alert, some of us might be having a problem trying to answer it, which I think is going to show how difficult writing questions are. So I'm going to ask the first question. I'm not going to answer right away because I've been talking a lot. So our first question was to our listeners. Oh, and if you're listening or watching now on YouTube, you still can answer these questions. So comment on YouTube below, we'll monitor. Comment on our blog, on Adam's Big Think. Also, you can email us your responses too. And follow us on Twitter with your responses and Facebook. Okay, there we go. So social engagement with media. How do you define yourself as a writer is our first question. Okay, wow. I think I need a break from that. So, well, let me ask Mary first. Like, Mary, say I was just in Starbucks in line with you and you said, oh, I'm working on my novel. And I said, well, how do you define yourself, Mary, as a writer?
I mean, I feel like there's so many ways to define yourself as a writer. I think some writers define themselves by the genre that they write in. For me, what has always rang true as far as being a writer is concerned is that I have always defined my writing or myself as a writer as a storyteller, whether it's my own stories that I create in my head or if I'm telling someone else's story. I think that's a huge part of writing. And, not that I think it gets lost necessarily, but I think when people hear writer, they either think books, magazines, newspaper articles. I don't think they necessarily look at the whole scope of what writing is, which, again, in my opinion, is storytelling. So
I like that. Storytelling. Okay. That's a good jumping off point. Okay. So Mary's going through herself as a storyteller. Erica. Okay, you're not in Starbucks now. Let's just say I meet you in the yarn store. And somehow you tell me that you're writing a poem and I say, okay, how do you define yourself as a poet?
I am not a poet. I do not define myself as a poet. You are just barely getting me to admit writer.
Okay, follow the hythetical though. This stranger really defines you as a poet.
I mean, it's a good question because
no, Erica would yell at a stranger. This is
not
following the hypothetical.
Leave me alone. I want my yarn.
just as long as I don't take my yarn. No.
Yes.
I mean, the big thing is I have not defined myself as a writer all along. I mean, since I started writing with the rest of you as a group, I mean, since I started just writing even with just you, Adam, I haven't defined myself as a writer, and I'm just now getting to a point where I'm becoming a little bit more comfortable with that. And it wasn't even like there was anything concrete that I could point to that would mean that I was really a writer. It's not like I set out with the goal of being published or anything like that. It was just, it just, it just wasn't there. But I think for me, there are some things that have shifted, and it's sort of an understanding and a knowledge of my own voice, which I'm still working on. It's things like looking at my own work, and as I'm writing, I had this experience recently where I was writing a poem and I wrote a line and I used a particular word in that line that I was not crazy about, but the word that I preferred changed the tone of the line entirely.
I remember this.
And what's that, Adam?
I remember this.
Yeah. And I write in Google Docs, and so I put a comment in there that said, this is the word I like better, but it changes the direction. And then when Adam and I were looking at it at another point, he agreed that I was right, that really did change the tone of what I was saying. And so that, and like having that moment of recognition for myself, that was a big deal to me. Like,
okay, so that was a big step in you defining yourself as
absolutely. So
okay,
I mean, really I mean, that you all convinced me to do that Sam Sachs poetry workshop
Yeah. We'll get into it. I don't want to give everyone.
These are all the little things that are kind of
That's good.
steps. So
Yeah.
I say that I mean, this is my cocoon. I'm in my cocoon right now, and I'm transitioning
I like that.
to defining myself as a writer.
Nice metaphor. Okay, so I'm gonna basically, my job as the moderator here is to make sure the listeners understand how each person is framing the question. So Mary says storyteller. Erica says the weight of defining herself as a writer was very difficult, but now she is in a cocoon stage. Okay, Adam.
By the way, Mary and Erica, if you have something sort of summarizing or totalizing to say, the position of moderator can be usurped. Just so you know. I guess I'll go next.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So I think I struggle with the label writer also, which may make Erica chuckle because I've been giving her trash about having the confidence to call yourself a writer, and now
The dirty looks you give me when I say I'm not a writer.
Yeah, okay, let's not air the dirty laundry.
I mean,
we have a task tonight. We're trying.
That's another episode.
So
that's another episode.
we're just gonna face off and have a staring
Okay, Adam,
contest. That'll be on
so
YouTube.
Adam
So-
is avoiding the question.
I am. Oh,
Evasion.
Don't say it, Adam.
Evasion.
Just go on.
Okay, yes. So I see Adam. I don't know who he is, and I see him in the what's the library in Columbia? I can't remember the name right now. Butler. There you go. Sorry, it came to me. I see you in Butler in the stacks, and I'm like, oh, are you a writer? How do you?
I think so. All the evidence I've collected says that I'm a writer. It feels weird to say it, but I think like the funny thing is that I don't think I've changed from the person I was as an adolescent who just had lots of hobbies. In that way, I don't think I've changed. I mean, back then I was playing piano, I was drawing and painting and playing chess and yes, writing and playing tuba. I've dropped the tuba, but the rest are still but I picked up knitting. So I'm still someone who divides his attention in a bunch of different directions. I like to cook, but am I a cook? No, of course not. I love to write. I wouldn't say that everything I do as a writer, but I do think I need to write. I mean, we've had that conversation a bunch, and I want to take your permission to read a few lines from Raina Maria Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet, which I first encountered in college and has really shaped the way I think. I'm not sure I like the passage, but I do know that I identify with it. I don't think that everybody has to, but I think I do. So, and it goes like this. You ask whether your verses are good. You ask me. You've asked others before. You send them to magazines. You compare them to other poems. You're disturbed when certain editors reject your efforts. Now, since you've allowed me to advise you, I beg you to give up all of that. You're looking outward. And that, above all, you should not do now. Nobody can counsel and help you. Nobody. There's only one single way. Go into yourself. Search for the reason that bids you to write. Find out whether it is spreading out its roots in the deepest places of your heart. Acknowledge to yourself whether you would have to die if it were denied you to write. This above all, ask yourself in the stillest hour of the night, must I write? Delve into yourself for a deep answer, and if this should be affirmative, if you may meet this earnest question with a strong and simple I must, then build your life according to this necessity. Your life, even into its most indifferent and slightest hour, must be a sign of this urge and a testimony to it.
That's beautiful and powerful. I mean,
yeah.
So I think, I mean, it's hard for me to acknowledge that that's what I've been doing,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I've been drawing myself near to other writers, forming a community with you all. I've been, I mean, I had this novel on standby while I finished my dissertation, and then I took it out again because it just, I wanted to see where it goes. I don't add to it every day at present, but I do feel driven to finish it. I do feel an absence when I don't contribute to it.
Mm.
So there is that. I mean, it is part of who I am. It is a significant part of who
I think we also like overlook the fact that like, yes, even when you're writing, like yes, that counts for something, but I think there's something also to be said for having at least just your head in the headspace of your novel. Like I find myself, I mean, I don't like you, I don't work on my novel every day. Like I feel like I should, but I'm always thinking about it every day.
Mhm.
There's always something that happens, you know, or just, you know, how my own brain works. It just eventually it just trails into some sort of aspect of my novel that keeps me in it. And
Yeah.
like you know, I'm
Well,
like,
well,
I'm determined to finish it.
part of what happens, and you and I both experience this, and we're certainly not unique in this, is that we have day jobs,
Mm-hmm.
right? I spend upward like 10 hours a day sometimes giving people bad news about the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great feeling to go from that to then writing a novel afterwards.
Right. And I think there's also like an emotional, mental toll that those jobs
Yeah.
take on your brain. Like I know when I get home from work, I don't want to focus on anything else other than decompressing.
Right. Right.
Just because it feels like there's too much, like I guess stress, you know, the normal stress that comes with a job. But I think it's hard to be a creative and have to have a job. I know that sounds so cliche or
it
like
is hard.
privileged or whatever, but
It is hard. You could say that it's hard.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a fact.
Mhm.
First of all, there's upwards of half a dozen hours a day when you're literally not working because you're doing something else, which is working of a different kind. And then there's the time afterwards and before where your energy gets sucked up in preparing for work, decompressing from work, etc. That's fine. I mean, there have been days when I was on from 12 to 10. I woke up at like 9, wrote for 2 hours, and then went to work.
Mhm.
Are those days frequent? I wish they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, Andrew, why don't we kick the football to you?
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I hijacked that.
No, that was great.
No, this is good. Yeah, I think if you asked me that, and I do get a lot of people asking me like what it means to write, or I think now, and I think all of us should talk about what we're currently writing eventually. Maybe that will be more in terms of the audience question. But I think I define myself, not that I avoid calling myself a writer, but I like to see that I'm more of a literary scholar, or I see myself as a scholar who writes, or I was even just thinking of the term a scholar performer, because I really think that what I do is a type of performance of lecturing or talks, I'll say.
Well, you in particular, you give
going
all
on
of
walking
these-
tours.
all of these public.
Yeah, I mean, now that I have the article that's published, I feel seen as a writer, if that makes sense, in terms of academia.
Mhm.
And that can be really, the goalpost always continues to get farther from you, right? So I'm relishing right now, like as we record this, in just the excitement of having my ideas out there. I think what I really love is seeing our blog evolving with seeing each of us in our writing process. Yeah, I see myself as a queer writer. If you really had to pin a certain definition, I would say I have a queer voice. Right, a queer male voice. I'll preface it. And
That
yeah,
I want to jump in though about the blog for a second. Is that's been dealing with the blog has actually been a big thing in framing me as a writer, because one of the things I realized, having spent most of the last 2 or 3 weeks focused on website stuff and prepping blog stuff and things like that, is I'm not writing my stuff. I'm writing for a different audience in a different way and looking at the work differently.
Mhm.
And I'm feeling differently about writing
mhm.
in general because I've had to go through that. Not that I don't like writing the blog, because I do.
Well, I was gonna ask, are you upset that you're not working on
No,
writing? Do you think like
no,
do you feel that you are neglecting the other writing?
Mm.
And when
yes,
you
I
say the
feel
other
like I'm
writing, what
neglecting
writing are
my
you,
stuff.
just so
I
everyone
feel
knows,
like
well, I think everyone
neg-
needs to know what writing you're talking about. What writing are you?
um what writing am I doing? Um for the, are you do you mean for the blog? I mean, I've been dealing with,
No, your personal writing.
oh, my personal stuff is, there's one short story, and I'm not a storyteller like that. I'm trying to learn how to tell a short story, because it's a skill. I mean, it's a process, and I um and I'm not very good at keeping track of the threads and tying things together and remembering that this has to move from point A to B to C and be wrapped up at the end. And there can't be, I mean, you can leave certain things open to the imagination, but you have to be restrained in the number of things you leave.
Yeah.
But just
Um,
remember, every time you watch a movie or a show, there's always something they never tie up at the end. And they're
Right.
making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars
Yeah.
to
Well, yeah, but
literally
that's
leave
just
some of these,
you do
plot
have to
holes
be, I mean,
open. Drives me
you do
nuts.
have to be restrained in how many things you leave.
Mhm.
But
I'm
mostly,
not so sure about that. I really no. I mean, I take your point that it's hard to write a short story and that it's hard to say. The Iliad does ends before the war. It ends with the funeral of Hector.
yeah.
There's nothing after, no loose ends after that. Achilles is still alive. Troy is still standing.
Well, okay, actually, this would be exciting because it really starts to pull back the onion layers of us as writers. But I'm sure I
Right.
know a lot of you tune in because you want to hear what's actually going on.
Parfaits also have layers.
Well, I think we need to be honest, because all of us have read a lot of each other's work, which was what makes our community so special, and a type of roundtable, like literally a roundtable that we share each other's work. That I've read Adam's short stories, I've read Erica's poetry, I've seen Mary's crime fiction.
That was the scariest thing though about getting involved.
Yeah,
Is
I think they've read some of my work. I don't know.
Come on.
Okay.
what you've shared, yeah.
We read your article before you sent it in.
We did. We read
Yeah,
your
you
article.
did,
We
you did.
read your poem.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I forgot because the article went through. There was like anyone who's
We
done
read a version of
in
your
a few
article.
stages, like you kind of get swept up in this heady timeline of revisions that you start to forget what you've read and what you're what you're working on every day and what kind of feedback you get. It's exciting. It was an exciting period. And plugging, we have the editors of the journal that my article was published in coming on to talk about what it was like for them to edit in July. So look for that in July. It's really exciting. They're giving their time to do that. But yeah, so
Yeah, that was the very first thing I said to Adam though when he said, come to the writing group, is I don't have anything to share. And he said, you don't have to. And of course, here I am, you know, 6 months later, and you guys have read, you know, the three of you have read, I don't even know how many pieces, and
Yeah,
he's
well,
convinced me that I should put a beta reader file together.
well, like
Which
Erica.
Have I yet convinced you?
you did. I told
Okay,
you you
okay,
did.
but just because we've talked about each other's work, I think it's important if someone wants to give examples. Like, I mean, I can start with Mary because I know about Mary's mobster
Novel.
narrative
Yeah.
pretty well with the novel she's working on. And like you said, I kind of, can you return Mary? Maybe you don't, if you want to speak to it, you don't have to, right?
Of course.
The option, but you kind of said that it starts to seep into your psyche every day. Like, it doesn't mean you actually
Mhm.
have to be typing the story, but it sounds like you're doing certain character work every day with your
Always.
novel.
Always. I mean, the character, at least in my specific novel, is based off of a very specific mobster, not a popular one. Or at least I don't think he's that popular, to be honest. I mean, sort of, but that's
Niche
the point.
mobster.
Semantics. But so for him, I had more of a set plan of his backstory and how this journey was going to take him. But with a lot of time that I've had to sit on certain characters, I've really had more time to form some of these other characters that I wasn't necessarily thinking too much about. I remember one of my notes from my teacher being that one specific character who was a detective seemed to be very cliche.
Mm.
And at the time, all I really had was those cliche cop shows where, you know, that was really the only example. And then I kind of had some experiences, not like any bad experiences, but like people I know who were in law enforcement or in law enforcement, I should say. And something clicked with me. I actually got in an argument with someone who is in law enforcement about how police are in this country. And I realized that's it. That's who I want this character to be.
Okay.
And there's always something,
No, I relate. I don't relate in terms of the character study. I can speak to this with my article. I said this on Twitter. I answered the question on Twitter. That because it helps, right? It helped me work through myself as a writer, which is always evolving, right? We're not stuck in this definition of ourselves.
Very true.
That I was feeling a critical void that I'm seeing. I still am. Like, there's this tension I see in the field of literary studies with 19th century studies, which is, where are the queer voices? And I was getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated that queer of color critiques were not being brought together. They were existing outside, and realizing that I needed to center them in this conversation and just say Whitman had these racist statements and they need to be written. Like, we need to have a reckoning. And it's not a sensationalized cancel culture debate. It's we need a nuanced discussion that actually looks at the legacy of slavery and his family and Native American genocide.
right.
And it was tense. I mean, I'm still feeling the tension. It's not like one person is having a debate with me, but I realized I kind of like that tension in my head.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of the process feels like putting a huge puzzle together, but a puzzle that I don't necessarily have all of the pieces to at any given time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like, okay, I'm putting this corner together, and then, maybe this corner, this little section here, it's like just like a whole, almost like problem solving, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's the problem solving that you want to do, and not the problem solving that they give you to do math homework. Sorry to throw shade on math.
I love math. I just say that. My mom is also He was a math teacher, so I do like
I
math.
give
Um,
people who do math so much credit because it
Well-
just doesn't compute up here.
okay, well, don't worry, I'm not going to bring out the calculus problems right now. So,
Please don't.
but yeah, this reminded me of the process you also said of carrying it in your head. I was also going to say the need that I'm now recognizing of why I really love walking and why I really took Stephen King's advice in his On Writing book, which I always plug. So eventually maybe Stephen King will come on the podcast. I'm calling you Stephen King. That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
You never
would cry.
know. We've put it out there, so it could happen.
Cry.
So that he says that writing time is to work through the process. And I agree with him because I don't think my writing in my chapter right now, I wouldn't have gotten to these points of the critiquing of democracy or understanding how democracy that Whitman borrows is already this really problematic exploitative system from ancient Greece. Like, it's connecting together. If I just sat there every day looking at the same words without taking a break, I wouldn't evolve. Like, I realize my walks, it also allows me just the chance to people watch.
Mhm.
I learn a lot through that observation, which I think comes from being, like Mary, a performing artist.
Mhm.
You learn how to do character studies. It's very Stanislavski method acting. But yeah, so okay, that's where I'm at. That's where Mary's at. I just read Adam's short story. I don't think when he wants to share, he wants to share. But
No, go ahead.
you know what? I think this is a nice transition to the audience question, because our other question was, I'm trying to look.
Wait, don't keep me in suspense. What did you want to say about my short
No,
story?
I will. Don't worry, it's gonna come. How do you define your audience? And I just want to say, as Adam's beta reader and part of his audience, I saw in his short story this really erotically charged bullying scene that he actually didn't analyze in it. And I thought that was a really interesting, not disagreement, but just some people, I know Margaret Atwood says this a lot. I'm not my own best critic. Like, don't look to me for literary criticism. Especially when people try to define The Handmaid's Tale as feminist, which there's a lot of
no.
categorizing. And I can understand why she comes from that approach, because yeah, it's also sometimes you're just so right. We're so close to our text. Like, people are even writing to me right now. I'm sure this has happened to all of us with our writing. People are writing to me about how the article impacted them. And I'm like, wait, is that what I meant? But I agree with them. It's just not exactly what was going on with my intention.
Right.
And I find that really interesting.
It is really interesting.
I think that's how it always is, though.
And I saw that in Adam's writing.
The bullying scene was meant to be erotically charged. I will say that.
Okay.
I have to get to that part. I read the first couple paragraphs, and let me just say, it is amazing.
Yeah, and let's just say I was reading
it.
as I was taking a bubble bath, which I think maybe
just adding to the eroticism.
You're
here.
welcome, I guess.
Yeah, adding like my own erotic layer to
that's good to know.
I read it and Adam was watching, so you get the whole voyeurism angle too. Right?
He was watching. What?
We were on Zoom.
I don't know what was.
That's right. Well, I gave Erica the story to read, and we were workshopping it together. So I got it's not 50.
It's not 50 Shades of Grey.
All right. Now I'm going to talk to our mutual audience and say what's actually happening. I wrote
like bubble bath, erotica. What is Adam's doing?
I wrote a story called "At the Sign of the Red Lion" that takes place in approximately 1570 and 1575 maybe, and concerns a young Shakespeare going to the theater for the first time. But the catch is that this is England, right? And in England, you were much more likely when you went to the theater to see a bunch of dogs murdering a bull. And so that's what he saw, and it made an impression on him. And the story is about how his whole life is violence, right? He gets beaten by the school teacher, he gets beaten by his father, he gets beaten by the other kids, and somehow he takes all of this and makes it something bigger and better than what he was given. And where that comes from, of course, is I've read Shakespeare at like some really pivotal moments in my life. I keep coming back to King Lear, which is the most, it's not the most violent Shakespeare play, but it's up there. And it's still my favorite precisely because it takes that violence and elevates it and turns it into something else and says you can do better. So I don't mean to like, Andrew, I want you to finish what you were going to say about your audience. That you said two things about your audience, and I want you to finish that because I don't want to steal your thunder. But I think I have a similar answer.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Adam, just him explaining that right now added a new layer to my analysis of his story, which is, of course, the violence is eroticized in his story because he's borrowing Shakespeare's poetics. Itself is eroticized violence.
Exactly.
Book to Lady Macbeth.
The black ram is tupping the white ewe.
Have I ever told you you are my favorite person ever to listen to talk about Shakespeare?
You're not, but thank you.
You really are. I mean,
Adam's giving us a free lecture.
I'm blushing under my beard.
Actually, but this happens every time we all meet together, which is why I think we just work well. Like we all are. I was gonna say putting ourselves into pieces like a puzzle, but
please don't.
It's like I'm trying to borrow Mary's metaphor, but it's too cliche now. Okay,
I will not survive you saying that.
I know.
I knew Adam was gonna hate that.
What would be an Ivory Tower episode without Andrew's metaphors? That just sometimes work, and sometimes like this didn't land. Like that, I didn't find my audience. So okay, audience. I would say what Adam just did as an example helped me understand that his audience does not have to know Shakespeare's work. And I say that because you don't know that the boy's name is Shakespeare. He's never called Shakespeare.
No, he's called Will.
Yeah. And I don't think you need to know it's Shakespeare. And the reason I say that is because I didn't know it was Shakespeare because Adam never told me his intention behind the story.
Right. This I loved this moment because Erica knew right away and Andrew didn't.
Yeah.
And it's really just like you can't predict what your readers will know. Andrew is a scholar with standing. And yet
thank you. Oh, that's sweet.
And yet missed it, which was information for me as a writer to say, do I want everybody to know it's Shakespeare? Do I want to beat people over the head with it? And I decided I kind of do. So as I revise the story, there's gonna be more head beating.
And see,
I like the
I'm gonna be beating my
this.
audience over the head.
And I'm with Mary. I disagreed with Adam, and I keep disagreeing with him because I'm not gonna let go. Because I told Adam when it comes to historical fiction, I actually like ambiguity. And one example I'll give is Gregory Maguire's Mirror Mirror, where he takes the Snow White metaphor. Oh my gosh. I'm just saying metaphor too much. The Snow White story turns it on its head by having the evil queen be one of the Borgias, Lucretia Borgia, actually. Really interesting conceit. Her name isn't Snow White, not Lucretia, but whoever the daughter happens to be in this scenario, I forget. And I think it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't have to be Snow White because it's a subversive tale. Okay, so when I say subversive, just to explain my lingo, taking something that's usually traditional and turning it on its head, going against the grain, seeing it from a different angle. And that's how I saw Adam's story. But that I also realized that's who I am as a reader. I gravitate towards stories with ambiguity. Like there's a reason why I love Virginia Woolf, because it is ambiguous. It's not all tied together. So that's why, right? It's Adam's story. So as writers, we get to decide how we're going to revise. But I like the ambiguity because I thought it was really powerful.
I just think it makes it more accessible, because I feel like maybe some people who would read this who maybe aren't fans of Shakespeare or
A good point.
aren't really, fluent in Shakespeare can look at that and go, wow, this is an entertaining story. But then also, like, I feel like just the fact that it's Shakespeare, like that, it's almost like a shock factor. I mean, it's not gonna be a shock factor now because we're talking about it on the podcast and people are gonna find out.
Crap.
Well, we'll get to learn who our listeners are really quick.
Yeah. It's like opening the belly of the Trojan horse outside the walls. We're just
or should there be
putting
a
it all on
special
display.
moment, kind of like the Scarlet Letter, when you find out that it's in the sable field. I don't know if anyone remembers the ending.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man, I'm
on
trying to remember.
a field of sable, the letter A ghouls.
Exactly. Which isn't as suspenseful as like it's Shakespeare, but it's suspenseful for Hawthorne.
I mean, I got the Shakespeare thing because I performed Shakespeare, I think, was really what did it for me. I might not have if I had only read it. But it may have been that immersive experience. I don't know.
But does it matter? My question is, right, this is about audience.
Right.
All of this is audience, actually. We're using Adam's story as a case study. That's what we're doing.
Fantastic.
Is as a reader, if you're a reader, Adam, right? This is about readers now. If they don't define the character, the protagonist, as Shakespeare, are they wrong readers?
No, of course not. Of course not.
Okay.
But that's for the current draft. If I change it around and make it more explicit, then that has to be part of the reading experience. I would also say that there's a lot going on in the story that echoes Shakespearean language, right? Because we all ask this question: how did the son of a mayor, like a small town mayor, with a business that went belly up, in the 1570s, how did he become such a good writer? And the answer to any such question has to be, what opportunities did he have and what advantage did he take of it? And so the way that you end up, so I don't know, there's just I mean, first of all our readers,
there's so many questions, because
right,
this actually I think is important though. Like, all of us have seen Hocus Pocus, right?
I have not.
Okay, Adam hasn't, but that's
with the shocked look on your face. I don't even know what it is.
Okay, but it's a very, very famous Halloween movie.
Sure.
So the witches, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy, Bette Midler, all use Puritan language. It's kind of like what Adam does with Shakespearean language and verse. However, the witches are not historically real women from the Salem witch trials. That's how I read Adam's protagonist, that it was the language of the Renaissance, but there's enough ambiguity that it could be any of these characters who fit different niches in the period. And I think, right, you're going to lose some things if you start to make it more explicitly Shakespeare.
You absolutely are. But that's why it goes through multiple drafts and multiple I don't know, beta readings, I guess.
And an agent.
Maybe there'll be a gamma reading.
Right. And I'm sure, Mary, you could explain the whole question about marketability.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
what would a literary agent say to Adam?
I mean,
I'm sure they would say make it explicit.
I don't know though, because the idea of marketability is to be able to reach as many people as possible. So if you leave it ambiguous and don't let the reader know that it's William Shakespeare. However, I'm not saying that you shouldn't come out like on social media or other outlets to be like, hey, this is who it's about. Because I think if you can grip a reader just solely, which sounds so simple, solely on the fact of just your story, that could make someone who hated reading Shakespeare in high school want to learn more about Shakespeare and want to read his works.
I mean,
or it could be someone, someone who hates Shakespeare is still going to hate Shakespeare, but they may really like your story.
That's a branding question. That's a branding.
Well, so I actually, the more I write about the more I write in the story, the more I see it as like something that you could package as a sort of educational pamphlet, because I read a lot of things when I was, let's say, 6th grade to 8th grade that were like Shakespeare adjacent, right? Like a prose rendering of Romeo and Juliet, or a shortened version of, what was it, 12th Night and Taming of the Shrew. You really shouldn't give Taming of the Shrew to 8th graders or 6th grade or whatever, like however old I was. Like that, like save the save treating your wife as a falcon you're trying to tame through starvation until age 16 maybe.
I don't even say college. I mean,
I think I told you though that one of my kiddos had a big, like, adapted for young readers Shakespeare, and was reading it probably in 3rd or 4th grade, because I asked, well, what's Romeo and Juliet about? And was told, well, there's this guy Romeo and he loves this girl Juliet and his heart pumps for her, and then they end up dead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
oh my god,
not a lie.
I mean, that is probably the most basic part of the story. Basically to tell the story.
I don't want us to lose. I don't want us to lose the focus.
Well, okay, so
no, wait. Sorry, 1 second. So Mary had said she gave a very literary agent response, and it reminds me of like, why does Gone Girl do so well? Why do these formulaic mystery thrillers, Girl on the Train, Gone Girl, In a Dark, Dark Wood, The Woman in the Window,
they do Dark, Dark Wood. Oh my gosh!
Why? Because they could be any woman who's in that situation. It isn't, resurrecting.
It's relatable.
Yeah, it's not like Emily Dickinson's on the train. You know what I mean? And I think. And again, it's not that I'm saying Adam should change. I'm just saying, who do you want your audience to be? And this is where the scholarly and the creative writer communities differ a little, because scholars are writing usually for very niche audiences. They start to use jargon that makes other readers tune out. And sometimes it becomes a very elitist activity.
It really does.
And do you want to continue that type of tradition? I mean,
but so you said something in your response to these questions that really touched me, which was that you write for your younger self, right? Do you want to elaborate on that before I continue making my point? Because I would love to hear it in your.
That was my Twitter response. There, thank you for remembering. I forgot. That was another younger self when I wrote that. So yeah, I said that, and it is true. I write for the Andrew who was coming out in 2008 when he first read Call Me by Your Name, because I'm writing for that younger self who wanted to see him reflected as a gay man coming out. And it's a purpose. And I think as writers, you need a purpose. Like, that is, to me, the ultimate writer's block, is not knowing the purpose.
Right. So,
but I don't know who I write for.
So sorry, I want to jump off of this point.
Okay.
There, something that I remember reading very frequently at a certain point in college, when I was reading I was taking a history class about the South, and we were reading a lot of Southern writers, and a lot of these writers, they have like a very, very strong sense of place, right? You read Flannery O'Connor, you couldn't imagine those stories taking place anywhere else but where they take place. And the same thing with Eudora Welty. And I mean, I would argue the same thing with somebody like James Baldwin, right? Like there are a few writers where you couldn't take their novels and just plant them somewhere else. And there are novelists where you could do that, and that's its own choice. But when you say something particular, you also say something universal. That's the point, right? That's the point behind a Eudora Welty novel or a Flannery O'Connor short story, right? Is that you get as specific and as narrow as possible, and you end up coming back around. And so that's what I think, Andrew, you were doing in this moment, in writing for yourself at a particular time. Everybody else is not you at that time, but the hope is to say something that speaks to that confused adolescent in us all, right? And I think, moreover, that for all of us, our first reader is ourselves, right? And most likely ourselves at a time of transition, at a time where, like, of trauma and change and whatever that we continue to feel. And that's why, right? That's why two ostensibly intelligent humans like Andrew and myself can be at such loggerheads about how a short story should progress. It's because we are different audiences ultimately, and so you write something as specific as possible, as meaningful as possible to yourself, and then you give it wings and wish it luck.
And I just want to say, I didn't want to like criticize that you were wanting to make it be more obvious about Shakespeare, because obviously, like we were talking about, as writers, we do have to choose our audiences. But I think it's just, I feel like I was coming more from a place of just wanting your work to be seen by as many people as possible. Therefore, the ambiguity. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't form that word.
It happens.
My mouth was not working. My brain was like, why can't we say this? But that's why, like, for me, like, that's why I want it for you, because I want as many people as possible to read your work. But that's also my opinion of how I define my audience, is trying to reach as many people as possible. Yes, are there certain niches, certain genres that we all have to technically fall in line to in order for that to be,
right,
for that to happen, you know? Yeah.
And that is a difference of approach. Like, some people, they try, like, they purposely try to reach an audience that's out there. I mean, you always have yourself as an audience, but then there's also, and Andrew, you with your public speaking gigs and so on could certainly speak to this, right? Like, I mean, you have to think to yourself, okay, what do other, like, what kind of performance are they paying me to give? It's a fair question.
They want to hear literary works. Like, it's good when you do close readings. Like, I actually read a whole poem, because, and it's not something I would include
to your lecture listeners.
But I mean, I want to talk about knowing your audience. I don't know who I write for, and that's been part of the problem with defining myself as a writer. Is I'm sitting here putting words on pages. I mean, I've talked. You've all heard my Jackson Pollock metaphor. I take the words, I throw them at the page, and some things stick, and sometimes they look nice.
I'm gonna admit too, Erica, I don't know my audience.
No, but you have an
Like,
audience.
I don't actually know who's right. We're never gonna know who's
No, but you have a vision
Like,
of who is likely to
okay.
pick up what you're writing, whether
Right.
it's a scholarly
Yeah,
audience,
yeah.
whether it's whether it's the people who are
Who are our podcast
Right.
listeners.
right, who are on your tours.
Yeah,
Things
I
like that.
noticed.
We
I
don't know.
noticed in the analytics we have a fan in Ecuador.
did.
Ooh.
There
Yeah,
we go.
Hello, Ecuador.
Hi.
How are
Hi
you?
to our
And there was somebody in
Ecuadorian fan.
Sweden too.
Hello,
Okay,
Sweden.
well, hi to you.
Anyway.
Okay, we'll do that whole podcast episode
Anyway.
another time.
no, but
But-
Erica,
It's a great
I
point.
swear you do have an audience. You're just like, it's the same thing with everything else. If you give the same level of thought that you've been giving to calling yourself a writer, to claiming an audience for yourself, you'll find the answer.
I don't
because
know
you'll
who's
start
gonna
with your
read it.
that's
Like
that's
that's
almost
kind of the whole
irrelevant.
point. Is
That's
Yeah,
almost
that is-
irrelevant.
I
You
agree. I do agree with Adam.
you start with
Mhm.
who am I writing for? Like
Mhm.
which part of myself needs to write,
yeah.
yeah,
or which part of
and it
myself
is
wants to write.
Like for
it
me,
is
it's
very
the,
much
that's
a
your audience.
need. I mean, it is a need at this point. That's what
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what
It's a
that's
need.
been the hardest thing about putting my things aside to spend so much time on the blog lately.
Yeah.
Is
well, wait.
what about me?
I just want to say, Erica had a very visceral response when I said I had a purpose, and I thought that was really interesting because I don't want to let that go. I thought it was a moment of difference of opinion, and I kind of wanted to hear, Erica, why you were visibly, at odds. When I'm like, well, no, I know my purpose is like that point in my life when I was working through my trauma of being bullied and then coming out, which I'm returning to again in my life, which is interesting how these things happen. But
Was this, you mean now, or was this when we were talking
No,
about
no.
it the other day?
now during this organic conversation.
Oh, I mean, because we've talked about we've talked about purpose and trauma and things like that. I think it's probably it's two things. One is that a lot of what I write is trauma driven. I mean, let's be real here. You three can speak to that.
God, yes.
Yeah. And I don't want to be writing somebody else's trauma porn. I want to write because I want to write. But there's other pieces to that too. I don't necessarily think that people are going to want to read about trauma in my life. Maybe there are some people out there that that do.
Well, I think I found your purpose, but I'm gonna leave it myself.
I
see
I
your
wonder, and I'm sure, I know that Adam has heard me have this breakdown more than once, but what happens when the trauma runs out? I mean, can I write about other things? And I've experimented with that a little bit lately. And what else is in there? There's a lot of pieces of it, but
yeah. I hope this isn't too simplistic, but is what you're doing a trauma healing project?
Not, it never has been intentionally. The reason I stopped writing kind of was a convergence of trauma all at once, and a number of different things happened in rapid succession, and I don't want and that's just it. I want to write because there is love and joy and passion, and
And that doesn't happen.
Po- Positivity isn't the right word, but I want to write because I want to write because it feels good to write. I don't want to write for therapy is therapy, and that's great. And I love my I love my therapy time. Like, that time each week for me to like
See,
focus on me.
when I use the word therapy, I don't mean in the clinical sense of having a therapist. I mean therapy in terms of what gets you through those moments of joy internally. That's how I'm using therapy.
Yeah, no. It's not about processing. I don't want it to be about processing that stuff. That's not why, if that's what it was, I wouldn't want to share it. But I want to, I've gone from, I don't have anything to share, I don't want anybody to see this, I can't show it to anybody, to I don't like this one enough to share it, I'm gonna just put it away. But I really like this one, even if it's still kind of raw.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a real evolution.
Yeah. I'm glad. No, it's important. See, I actually, you're helping me define. This is so good that we're doing this for all of you out there. No, but I think I do write for healing. I'm starting to see. I noticed that my writing tends to try to find a voice of someone confronting that they're going to eventually work through the challenge and then come out on the other side. Even in my article, in a way, it's how do I continue to teach this problematic author,
right,
and confront it, right? That's an obstacle. So maybe, yeah, I write obstacles and try to figure it out. And tomorrow I might change how I define that. But yeah.
I sort of think about it as photography in words. I preserve, I want to, and I say I can't remember how I wrote about this, in this current draft of my big think, but it's preserving moments. It's preserving little things.
I like that.
The way that if you pick up a green leaf that's on the ground, but that's been attacked by a caterpillar, and you look at the holes in the leaf, look very carefully, and you'll see how there's that hole with its jagged edge and how it shifts in color from brown to yellow to green. That's what I want. I want those that I want to preserve that moment.
You
or
want
the strawberry leaf in my fingers the other day that I wrote about.
You don't want the break. You don't want just from what do they call the larva? Is that, what's the first stage of a caterpillar?
Or the egg? But I mean, after that, I think it is the larva.
I think it's pupa, larva,
well,
cocoon. But anyway, yeah.
Any zoologists out there.
Entomologists.
Yeah, I was just entomologists.
So, okay, but my point is, you don't want just the one stage to the next stage. You want these really the gradations. And I think that's, I think we found something. I'm gonna stop there because I think you found something.
I mean, but it's really it's about photography. It's like taking photographs, only with words. That's
And on that, we asked 2 questions, and wow, that was. I think we learned a lot about each other as writers. Yeah.
Don't we always?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I learned a lot about, and I think it's interesting, to acknowledge that Mary and I had a very different approach to what Adam was writing. Not that we didn't, right? It's not about not enjoying it. We enjoy the writing. Maybe, is that tension productive for Adam? Do you start
That
to
is an open question
Yeah, there we go. Let's leave
on
it.
which I will keep you all updated.
Yeah, good.
But it goes back to the Matthew Zapruder thing that you talked about in the poetry episode, the quote that you sent me the other day when I asked for it.
Yeah.
About how we all look at the different words differently. I don't expect you to see what I write the same way I see it.
Mhm.
I'm certain that Adam doesn't see it the way you see it. I mean, knowing what I know about what I write about and your different experiences.
Yeah. Well, and
You know.
everyone has heard, if you followed during our mental health, and we're going to return to mental health and trauma again. I mean, we kind of did return to trauma right now. But
It is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah, there you go. Good. Thank you for
plug
shouting.
that.
Good. That my poem, Taking Back My Voice, I always wonder how many read my poem and just say, oh, that's what happened to Andrew that night. That's not why I wrote it. You know, like I didn't write it as a step-by-step of the sexual assault.
Mhm.
I wrote it as, how does the speaker find his voice to actually try to get to the other side of healing?
Well, I have trouble imagining somebody would read it like that, but then,
well,
I'm
again,
ever the optimist.
Well, right, and it's also, how do people approach? What does someone want to get out of the writing?
Right.
That's like, if you had told me, Andrew. Okay, maybe we should end here, and then we're going to turn to our listeners, which we're excited for. I think, again, I'll return back to Adam because we've done this as a long case study, but it would be like Mary and Erica. Like, okay, maybe now, can I connect all of this together? It's like a conference question. But okay, so say Adam had told me that I need to see Shakespeare in the protagonist. Okay, Erica told me I need to, I'm just thinking of like what I've recently just read from Erica. Okay, I know that I need to see someone who has gone, like that her trauma is reflecting like one specific night from her past. Okay, Mary says, I need you to see that it is this mobster and here's his biography, right? I'm going to have a really different approach when I read their works.
True.
Because now I've been primed.
True.
It's also why it does connect to teaching. It's like when you teach, what happens when you give all the background of an author and then say, here's their work. The students are probably going to start to do biographical readings of the work because you've given them the bio. I'm not saying it's not right. It is a type of approach.
No, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Something happens. Something happens.
We'll see.
Okay, so we are now going to turn to, I don't know what we should call our voicemail section, but
They're listener contributions or whatever.
The boiler room speaks.
I like that.
Knocking on the boiler room door is what they're doing.
But I'm now like envisioning an actual personification of a boiler, like
Home Alone style.
Yes, that's actually what I was thinking. Okay, so we're gonna pick it up with our listener. We're gonna first start with who everyone knows who's been following the podcast. Benta Videbak has weighed in. Here we are with Benta Videbak giving her response to our writing roundtable questions.
Hi, I am Bente from Port Jefferson. I'm a retired English professor from Stony Brook University, and I'm currently working in the Honors College in my retirement. Since around 1990, all my writing has been geared towards the undergraduate population. And what I've been doing is introducing, editing, and footnoting Renaissance drama. I have edited and have published 2 anthologies, one on revenge tragedy and one on histories. And I'm currently working on domestic tragedy that will be published in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. The reason I'm doing what I'm doing is that while I taught these plays, I found that either the footnotes are unnecessarily convoluted or not enough. So I decided to do something that would the medium try and meet the need and not exceed the need. And the plays I've used in the classroom have had success, and people have told me, and I quote my kid, "You don't make spastic footnotes."
Okay, and there's Benta's response. So, group,
But
which
I love her.
this is the
I could listen to her read her shopping list.
and this
I
is
swear
the
I
first
could.
time that Mary and Adam are hearing it. Erica and I actually heard it when she recorded, so we got a little heads up. Okay.
But I love Adam on footnotes. Was it in your big think or your other
It
essay?
was in my big think.
Yeah.
There will
Which
not be.
is
What did I say? There will not be footnotes, and if there will, they'll be sarcastic as fuck.
something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Uh,
Erica wanted to say something in response to this.
I mean, I don't want to soak up a whole lot of time tonight on it. I'm sure we'll do another roundtable that has to do with identity stuff another time. But yeah, it's just the word spastic stuck out to me. The rest of our audience does not know that I am a disabled person, and actually became disabled as an adult. So that kind of changes my perspective on things. And one of the things I try and do is, just like any, marginalized community, I try and address, I address that kind of language when it's used in, ways that might not be the most sensitive. So, if you want to dig into that yourself, feel free. If the rest of you all want me to, I will put some resources up in the episode notes when we put this up on the blog about the language of disability.
Yeah, and Erica, I had found disability studies readers, anthologies of those who do disability studies. So we're going to include that here just for anyone, like Erica's saying, who's interested in how language around disabilities, how it gets framed, but also like how Bentis cited her undergrad students saying that to her, right? It was a quote from a student. And I think it's important that, like the students saying you're making this more accessible for the public, which ties back to our whole conversation. And it's interesting because accessibility is, opens up usually those who have different identities. So I think, it's a really interesting way. I'm glad you brought it up, Erica. I think it's necessary. And
yeah, I mean, and it's something we can talk more about, on another episode.
Oh, we will. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have a roundtable on disability studies.
And if people have questions, by the way, feel free to tweet them at us.
That's important.
Or email, or Facebook them or whatever.
Yeah, and thank you, Benta. That was we are so excited that you are publishing with us, right?
Yeah.
And that everyone soon can see Benta's first play that she released to us with very accessible footnotes that don't have jargon, which is important because if you've ever tried it, especially the one I will point to, get the Moby Dick Norton Critical Edition and those footnotes. Editor, he does a great job footnoting everywhere he can, but it becomes that kind of meta text where you want to just then read the footnotes, and the footnotes themselves could be Moby Dick. So it's an interesting. No, it's important, but it's also right. Who is your audience here? And for that, it tends to then be the scholars. So thank you, Benta. It's important work. We're excited to release it to all of you. So next we have someone who Adam and I actually have interviewed. You haven't heard his interview yet, so here you go. Here's a nice preview of how he defines himself as a writer. This is Eric Peace. So here's Eric weighing in.
Eric is based in Hong Kong.
Listeners of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. My name is Eric Zhang from Hong Kong, currently a lecturer in a self-financed college, doing both teaching and research. I think I will label myself as an impulsive writer. I mean, that I usually write in impulses, short bursts of energy. This seems to sound lack of organization and discipline, but I love the sense of achievement when I finished my assignments on time or in time, depending on how you see it. It's the hardest to write during the semester because every one of us is very dedicated to teaching, admin, and student consultation. Now that I'm in my semester break without a summer teaching job, I can spend 4 months to write articles, submit grant proposals, and plan ahead. Hopefully there will be a couple of beautiful babies out in the coming 4 months. So my usual writing arenas are academic journals having a specific focus of linguistics and education, as well as my personal blog on the similar topics. So I guess the audiences in both arenas are roughly the same, although the register I choose for my blog is obviously different. Writing blog posts is relatively easy because ideas just come straight out of my brain, and I believe readers aren't too concerned about the format or structure because, clarity and conciseness is perhaps all they need. Meanwhile, journal articles are difficult to write mainly because of the register. You need to reword what you think in order to look professional. Still, I love both identities, or you may say roles, because they are complementary. When I'm running out of ideas for academic writing, I resort to my blog to brainstorm ideas and share my thoughts there. So in the coming plenary talk I'm invited to speak at, for example, I used some of my ideas from my blog to talk about how to teach students to put insights in their essay conclusions, for example, using a linguistic perspective. So basically, the idea of taking ideas from blog posts would work sometimes for me. So my final thoughts will be, don't think, just write whenever you have a chance. So thank you so much for listening. I wish you all well. Take care and lots of love from Hong Kong.
Oh, Eric, thank you.
I love his voice. I honestly didn't peg his accent for Hong Kong. He has a
You
very
will-
nice accent.
You
I
will
like how he
hear
speaks.
us talk about his
The whole background. There's a lot.
his accent. He brings it up as a point of interest, I think.
Yeah, there's a nice teaser. Well, Eric, that was
That was
wow.
fabulous.
I just
Mhm.
like both him and Benta, like how they did that so quickly, which if we each did that, we'd have a very good episode. But no, it was so succinct. I think that idea of going back and forth between the blog and the academic writing, I thought was really interesting.
Mhm.
Like when he knows when he wants to turn from one to the other.
Mhm. And I feel like writers just want to, or some people think that writing or their identity as a writer just has to be one thing. And I've noticed, like, even in my time in my master's program, they kind of wanted you to fit in one box and one box only. And that's what you're going to write. And that just never sat well with me.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Because why should you? Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah,
We are the
exactly.
outcasts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a
And-
good
and
way.
they
But I
really-
think
they-
I think you point to me as the poet, which that's another story for
Yeah.
another.
Well, we have one more. Or wait, do you want to add, Erica?
I do actually, because I what he said about like that sort of rapid fire, quick, few minutes here and there resonates with me a lot. Makes me think of William Carlos Williams a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course, here I am ranting about not being a poet and talking about poetry, right? But
As one does.
I do a lot of that. And I keep a Google Doc with random lines that I like, that I, have scribbled down, that just, when I if had this thought or that thought or whatever, it just, the way it came out just sounded really nice.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I think maybe one day
Yep.
it would be fun to just see, what I could turn those into. Yeah, I keep it as a Google Doc because then I have it on my phone
No, I like that. No, I just wanted
whenever
to
I'm
show,
anywhere.
now that we're actually doing a YouTube video, I want to show that I actually have my notes to Adam's story at the sign of the red line. Because anything that I now read for pleasure, quote unquote, if it's not like related directly to my dissertation, I write down what I read. So like, you know, I don't want to go over everything I wrote because I don't remember it all. But it's basically what Mary and I already were discussing with Adam, which is, I said the last few paragraphs cause panic with the reader, since it seems like he is going to be trampled in the fight. Well, that's still what I would say. Okay. I guess I wasn't that relaxed from the bubble bath that I didn't know what I was writing. So
How you took notes in the bath without smearing everything
no,
everywhere.
no, I didn't do it in the bath. No. That takes dedication. Actually, yeah.
No, it was like Archimedes. You said Eureka and had to like run to your desk.
Okay, so we have one more audio, and his name is Dean Alemang, right? I think I'm saying that right. It's Erica's friend. And this is the first time we're all hearing it, so I'm really excited. Thanks, Dean, for submitting.
Yeah, welcome.
Response. So here we go. This comes from Dean.
So my writing is nonfiction, it's technical writing, and it's really about a particular subject that I am expert in, and that has to do with sharing data on a global scale. Now, I passionately believe that a lot of the issues we have in the world today, so social issues, scientific issues, healthcare, politics, a lot of this heavily has to do with being able to understand how the world responds to the actions we take. And understanding that really comes down to data. So my passion is to democratize the processing of data so that anyone in the world who has the interest and wherewithal can understand how the world is working in a sort of dispassionate, unemotional way. And when I think about my identity as a writer and who I think of my audience, I really see these the same question. And that's because the standards that I'm expert in take a certain amount of mathematical sophistication, certain experience in working with data and logic that a lot of people don't have. But I feel that an awful lot of people in business and in politics do have a need for this, and even many of them understand this. And my gift is to be able to take these difficult things and match them with the rationale of people in business, people in politics who are trying to understand the world and have a certain eye towards data, but don't quite have the sophistication to work through the math. And often I'm told that my explanations have linked these things to the interests of the people that I'm talking to, and that in contrast to many of my colleagues who get lost in the technical details, that I manage to keep this at a level that the business analysts are able to understand. And whenever I write, I think of a student from one of my classes or one of my clients who gets it. They understand the power of data and they want to exploit this, but they really can't get the technology to work for them. And what I do is explain the rationale of the standards, why they are the way they are, how these can be made to act in the service of these people. And that is why I write. And I have a number of projects about some finance models that I've worked on that I really want to express the rationale why this is the way it is so that you can use it. I have some ideas about the whole enterprise. How do you produce artifacts that help people share data and apply it to their real world? And this is the passion that drives my writing, and I find myself with too many projects that I don't finish any of them, except for the one book that's actually sold pretty well. But I have so many manuscripts that are competing for my attention. I really hope to get time. I'm actually taking a month off later on this year to see if I can really move some of these projects forward.
Wow. First, Dean, I am imagining that you're in the subway because I
I know, I heard it too.
whatever that ambient noise is, I am here for. I love it.
He may have been on his balcony. I don't know.
I don't know. I like it.
I like
It
the
had the
ambience.
emotion.
No, it was good. It was like an ASMR.
Right?
Well,
I love that. I always love to hear from a fellow utopian. I really do. Like somebody who believes that their writing, if it falls into the right hands, can make the world a better place. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so for all our sakes.
and I think, well, I liked that idea of, right? Dean says democratizing. Benta has said accessible.
Yes.
Eric had a similar kind of phrasing too, about, when he was talking about his blog writing, like how it's more for the public. There's this common thread. And I think
I hope so.
if anything, well, first, I just want to thank Benta, Eric, and Dean, because that does take vulnerability for you to send us a recording, have us have our expressions present if you're watching.
Let's
And
react
then
to it in real time.
Yeah, and have us discuss. And, thank you all for doing that. It really means a lot, I know, to continue our conversation. So please, everyone else, you saw it wasn't that we are not auditioning each of you. This is not a chorus line. So yeah, please continue to.
I've known Dean for a long time, but he kind of epitomizes the word sapiosexuality to me. He like thrills my nerd brain.
Okay, Erica, we're not at that part of the podcast.
No.
I love it.
There will never be anything like that there. But it's just like I love my conversations with him because it thrills my nerd brain.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm like just his passion behind the word data. I'm like,
I want to hear more.
Yeah, he believes it. And I respect.
You'll get him on the podcast later this year sometime.
Well, Dean, we're gonna we have your email, so we are gonna reach out.
Someone said it though. I like that he used the word passion. I feel like we haven't, or maybe we did, but I just like that he used that word.
And that it was from a scientific field, right? And he said the word passion, right? Because when you hear passion, you usually think creative writers.
Exactly. Not really analytical writers.
There you go. Oh, and Erica, can you read what Jillian Pecora? Thank you for tweeting it to Erica. Erica will now read what Jillian had tweeted us.
Yep. And Jill is a friend of mine. And let's see. So she works in news, but also writes creatively. So I guess that background is useful.
It's helpful.
She says, I'm a writer, but I don't think something I do defines me. It's part of who I am, part of the sum, but not the whole of who I am. I hope my writing conveys the thoughts and meanings I attribute to it. But once a piece is out in the world, it belongs to the reader, not to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good conclusion to this, because
yeah. I mean, as somebody who has a really hard time sharing what I write, I totally get that feeling.
Well,
I think there's two sides of that coin, though. I think, the author still holds what that story is to them. But again, on the other side of that coin is once it's released into the world, it does belong to the reader. You can't control how readers view your work, and you're never going to be able to. And I think that's just such a strange thing, because again, coming as a creative writer, I feel like I have such a level of control over my stories and how it's presented and the language. I mean, and again, that just comes with being the writer. You just have that control. In some ways, you are like the, you know, all-knowing being of the book, you know. But again, once it gets out into the world and each individual reader is experiencing it and internalizing it, at least hopefully they internalize it to some extent, you know, that's out of your control. You can't force them to see your work how you wanted it to be seen. It's totally up to them.
Exactly.
See, that's so different for me, because it's, to me, it's sort of like a one size fits all sweater, except, you know, you're going to put the sweater on 3 different people and it's going to look 3 different ways.
Mhm.
So I know whatever I
Fascinating
put out
idea.
there isn't necessarily going to be seen the way I wrote it. And I think that's what makes it so hard for me to put things out sometimes.
There's a fear. That's a fear, right? It is. It is. It's like, now that my article's out there, I'm moving forward in my process. I'm like, yes, of course, there's like books, there's text that I now see and I'm like, oh, that would have been so interesting there. But, right, it's an evolving conversation, but that piece is done. But it doesn't mean I can't now continue that into another writing piece. And maybe as we conclude, I just feel like everyone we've had on the podcast has had that kind of similar process as an artist. Like Matt Alcoyne, once his Whitman opera Crossing was done, he moved to Eurydice. I mean, there's an arc that he talks about in the episode. But like, I've asked him, like, would you ever return again to Whitman? And he said, I've said what I had to say about it. Like, it's there. And the same is true of Renee's choreography. Like, I've asked her before, what do you do after you've done the choreography of, say, Tarzan? She said, it's done. Like, it is now a finished piece for her. And I understand that because, you know, once it's out there, you move on creatively. It doesn't mean I think you leave it. I think, though, it evolves, you know?
I think it's like you're just leaving little pieces of yourself, but like in everything, you have to move on. You can't just be stuck on one thing or one aspect of your life, because you're never going to be able to move on and grow.
Is that the writer's block?
But one of the things
you aren't doing a Hansel and Gretel trail, you know, like
you're not following the cookie crumbs. You have to figure out. It's more of it's probably Whitman. The 2 paths. Taking the road less traveled. Is that Whitman? Am I right?
You're close. That's Robert Frost.
Damn it.
No, it's okay. Robert Frost is basically Whitman's 20th century plagiarist. But I mean, wait.
Man, I feel like they were taught in the same thing in high school.
No, he is. He's a naturalist.
Probably were. Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things I have had to learn to stop asking is it finished? It's finished when I know it is, and I'm not good at telling when it's there yet. That's something I'm working towards, and so I'm still very much reliant on outside readers for that piece. But I'm getting better at it. I mean,
you're about to release something. I know you will, and because out of all of us, I think Erica is the only one who hasn't released her work. Maybe
I have not.
Is about Adam's releasing his story. So, thank you, Adam, for now it's out of his hands, and it's anxiety ridden, of course.
Well, I'm releasing a draft of the story.
Well, okay, he's releasing a draft. See, he said draft, but okay.
But don't we all say that?
I know. He's releasing.
No. In this case,
he's still releasing a story.
I know I need to work on.
I don't know. I was reading Dylan Thomas today, and you know, in there were notations in the edition that I was reading about where he had crossed things out in pencil or, you know, left notes to himself. So, you know, sometimes they even release the drafts and leave him alone.
Okay, so we are leaving our own draft right now and concluding.
Yeah, we're gonna.
So we want to thank you all. Wow, I always say it's true though. Every time we all meet together, and why I love this roundtable format now is I'm learning so much about the whole team, like just our own process, and so exciting. Well, thanks all for a Friday night that was where I would want to be, and hope you all feel the same. Excited that we're now up on YouTube. So good night. Stay well, everyone. We hope you're all, you know, enjoying the podcast. Adam, your due diligence, you know what it is. Please.
So, yeah, we're gonna put a bookmark in this. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to visit us at our new website at ivorytowerboilerroom.com. You'll find blog, links to our Facebook and Twitter, and you will find, as we mentioned, a draft of the short story I wrote that got vivisected in this very podcast. Now, here is Blackberry Blossoms, arranged by Michael O'Brien and recorded by Michael O'Brien on the guitar and Emily O'Brien on the recorder.